Let's move on to high finance. And here we see spectacular Western buildings at a bank and a department store. Much of this will be erased in the bombings in 1945, but here they are, Mitsui Bank and Mitsukoshi department store.
Modern building indeed. Now this bank, built for Mitsui, was designed by New York architects. So in that sense it wasn't homegrown, but very much in the style of a bank you would expect to see in or around lower Manhattan, Wall Street. Mitsui was one of the great pre-modern trading companies that evolved at the turn of the century in the late 1800s into a multifaceted corporation, which kept its hand in a bit of everything, as it still does, and banking was one of those, so a major bank. And next to Mitsukoshi department store, also a dry goods store really that traces its history back into the Edo period and now emerges as a department store. So what strikes me first about the names is these are very traditional names.
Indeed.
That have emerged into the modern period with grand Western style buildings and established themselves in an international vocabulary.
Of course, it's the same company.
Same company.
Mitsui and Mitsukoshi are owned by the same conglomerate, the Mitsui conglomerate. But someone who would have been looking at this would have seen the embodiment of modern Japanese industry and capitalism and consumption, all rolled up in one of very few, a dozen perhaps, very wealthy families that jointly own stocks to these major corporations that were known as zaibatsu, loosely translated as conglomerates, oftentimes. Financial cliques is another way that they've been called. And they are a major part of what industrializes Japanese economy that also fuels the Japanese war machine during the 1930s, but at the same time becomes a target of increasing popular ire as precisely a symbol of increasing inequality in Japanese economy and society. And after the war, of course, the Allied forces attempt at breaking these conglomerates down into pieces, but then they come back. And Mitsui and Mitsubishi, which are former zaibatsus, are still a major part of Japanese economy to this day.
Koizumi's little note here, his annotation, I think is kind of charming because he really asks you to look closely at the print. That if you see between the buildings down there, there's a little red car. And he notes that this was also a time when the red customer service cars were offered by Mitsukoshi department store. Now, I wonder if these functioned as taxis, or after if you come to the store and do a bit of shopping and maybe a bit more than normal, they're happy to take you home in one of their cars.
They often used to deliver what
you
bought.
purchased.
Yeah.